Good morning, sunshines. Today we're going to talk about tech rehearsals. Dun dun dun. Tech rehearsals can be the most difficult time and also the most exciting time of developing a play. There are several things about tech rehearsals that are, I'll probably tell some stories a little bit today. But I'm going to give you a basic layout of the way to do a tech rehearsal and to succeed. First of all, we've talked about the 5 P's before, but just to remind you, the 5 P's are pre-planning prevents poor performance. There could be a 6th P in there if you want to add a little piss in it. But it never counts more than here. The first thing about a tech rehearsal is the integration of the cues of the show into the run of the show. That's what a tech rehearsal should be. In order to accomplish that, you really have to do a lot of work and planning. The problem with most tech rehearsals is that people are behind schedule. Sets aren't finished being built, painting hasn't happened yet, you have costumes that are still being made, that sort of thing. Now, again, that's nobody's fault. It is something you just have to deal with and play it by ear. But again, we'll talk about those aspects as we get there. But there are some things that can happen prior to the tech to make the tech go well. We'll call it things you need to do in order to set stuff up. First of all, some plays, some theaters, the tech rehearsal is literally the first time you've walked into the stage. A lot of summer stock situations, professional situations, you've been rehearsing in some sort of rehearsal room. And so the tech rehearsals is suddenly the first time you're actually walking on stage, the first time the actors are walking on stage. So the first thing you need to do is familiarize yourself with just how to get around the theater, where the doors are, where the dressing rooms are, how to get from the dressing rooms to the stage, how to get from stage right to stage left, where the crossovers are. So it may be well worth your time, especially the first time the actors are there, just to have a 30-minute little introduction to the theater. Here's where we are, here's how you get to the front of house. If you have front of house entrances for your actors, here's the avenue you get to take. If you're backstage, these are the areas you can go, these are the areas you should go, these are the areas you should not go, that sort of thing, just an introduction to the space. That should always be a part of this. Now, some theaters you rehearse on stage, and that is something that you don't need to do because everybody already knows what's what. But the first things you can do, and again, some techs will require this, some not, but if there are any tech tables that you need in the audience, one of the videos we're about to watch is of a tech rehearsal for a Broadway show, and you will see in that there are 20 tech tables. You've got lighting has 3 or 4 tech tables, sound has a couple tech tables, the director has a tech table. These are just places in the audience for various people to sit with their computers, with their programmers, with the people that they need, having a light so they can see the notes that they're taking, all that sort of stuff. Tech tables should be set before any kind of tech rehearsal starts. That can be done if the tech rehearsal starts on a Saturday morning, let's say, Friday afternoon, you can set up tech tables. There's no reason to waste tech time in setting up tech tables if people need them. Now, if you don't need it, if a person doesn't need a tech table, don't set one up. But it's better to have too many tech tables with enough lights to turn on, and again, putting a little gel on the light so it doesn't get onto the stage and change the look of the light on the stage is very important. Having a God mic, some sort of way to communicate to the cast to hold, both for yourself and possibly a director, possibly a choreographer. It depends on how many people you think might need a God mic in order to stop the show or to stop the tech rehearsal. One of the rules about tech rehearsal, and you should tell your actors this as a part of the introduction to the theater, anytime they hear the word hold, which is hopefully the only time they're ever going to hear it in any production process, anytime they hear the word hold, you don't just casually stop. You stop immediately where you are. Because a lot of times people are yelling a hold because somebody's about to get hit in the head with a piece of moving scenery. And so if you're on the fly rail and you hear hold, don't just keep flying things in, stop. If you're on the deck crew and you're rolling a piece of scenery and you hear hold, stop. Hold should stop you dead wherever you are. If you're just walking across the stage and you hear hold, you should not take the next step, because the next step may be through an empty trap that you were unaware that was there. Yes? So hold is the word. A lot of times people say stop and other things, but you should say hold. And as soon as you hear someone says hold, you should scream it out so that everyone knows that we're on a hold. That is fine for everybody, no matter where you are in the theater. As soon as the stage manager says hold, please, everyone should yell hold, or thank you, hold, yes? And stop where you are, because you don't know what the reason the hold has been called for. And then once the lights are up and everybody can see what the problem was, then you can go back to a safe situation. But there needs to be some sort of God-mic communication. Again, that can be set up the day before, but there should be some way to control tech rehearsal other than screaming. Yes? Even in small theaters. You need to make sure that there's enough headsets. Everybody's got headsets, that they all work. All that can be done prior to the tech rehearsal. Now, I'm just going to be honest with you. 9 times out of 10, first thing that happens at a tech rehearsal is somebody doesn't have a headset. You forgot that the orchestra director or conductor needs a headset. You forgot that the stage manager, assistant stage manager, stage right, that also needs a headset. There's always somebody to deal with the headset, and the headsets are always broke. Because again, the only time you use headsets are during the show, and then people throw them in a bundle, and they get stepped on and thrown around, and time happens. And so having enough time to have, let's say you have 10 headsets on the stage, a couple of spotlight operators, a couple of headsets in the booth for your soundboard, your light board, you got stage manager, you got backstage headsets. There's just not many times when everybody has their headset on all at once until you get to tech rehearsal. And so I promise you, one of the first things is very frustrating to a lot of people, because really until everybody can communicate, it's useless to go on. Because that's the point of the tech rehearsal, is to get people on the same page, and that people can't be heard or can't hear even better. I mean, for instance, there's not really any reason the spot op necessarily needs to talk back. As soon as you say you're spot A, you're spot B, spot A, your position is here, this person is your spot B, this is your person in Q1 or whatever it is. They should hopefully understand who that is. And so if their microphone doesn't work, not an emergency. Let's talk about, while we're on headsets, let's talk a little etiquette. Not initially, because initially in tech rehearsal, everybody's going crazy. Usually in tech rehearsal, there's also, most headsets have an A and a B channel, so that everybody can listen, like the sound people can listen to A, the light people can listen to channel B, and the stage manager can be broadcasting to both. That's an example of how that can work. Not all headset systems work that way, but a lot of them do, especially in larger theaters. Once you get into the run of the show, and once everybody gets bored with no matter how difficult the cueing of the show is, I promise you there will be a time in the run of the show where suddenly everybody knows what they're doing, and it just is easy to do, and your head starts wandering other places, and people start, will mess up on a line, or somebody will trip, or something will happen on stage, or somebody's dating somebody else backstage, or somebody's broken up with somebody backstage, or, there's a billion things that happen in the theater. And so there's a certain anonymity, much like the web gives you an anonymity, and so people will start broadcasting things they would never say to another person on Facebook and other things. When you get on headset, you have people in your ear who are listening to you, and because they're bored to tears and can't go anywhere and do anything, headset conversation can take place that is totally inappropriate, and no one in the right mind would ever say to the person if they were actually hearing what was going on. So the headset should be, you need to control headset talk, let me put it that way. Another thing, as a stage manager, when I'm stage managing, if there's a long period of time between cues, it's not that I encourage headset talk, but I don't mind it simply because I know that everybody's awake. If you've got a show with 10 light cues in the whole 2-hour show, 5 of them are going to be at the beginning of the show, 4 of them are going to be at the end of the show, then there's the intermission cue, that's it. For an hour you do nothing, and then you gotta turn the lights on for intermission, then for an hour you do nothing. It can become mind numbing. And so having a little banter on the headset about life or liberty or whatever you're discussing, where we're going after for a waffle, whatever that conversation is, and no matter how inane, at least you know people are awake and not asleep. Yes. So I don't mind it so much, but when it gets too raucous, especially once the stage manager calls for a warning, all headset talk ceases. Yes, a warning is given for each cue about a page before the actual cue happens. There's a warning for the cue about a page before, a standby for the cue about 3 lines before, depending upon how long the lines are, and then the go is on the moment. Yes, where we decide in the tech rehearsals. Yes, so have the headsets up and running. Have running lights so that people can see backstage. Again, something can easily be done the day before. Have prop tables set up and marked. Something can easily be done the day before. Have a light on the prop table so that people can see the props. The best way, again, for a prop table to be done is off stage in the wing, as far away from the stage as you can have it, so that people don't exit and run into prop tables. Actors need to be told that they're not finished exiting the stage once they have cleared the leg. They haven't finished exiting the stage until they are in their dressing room. Because a lot of actors will get off stage and just stop and mingle. Actors should not be backstage in the wings because you don't know when a wagon's gonna run over you or something that's gonna fly and hit you. The actor needs to know that when they are not on stage, unless they're about to make an entrance, when they're not on stage, they need to be getting back into the dressing room, or the green room, or wherever the waiting place is for the actors. That's where they stay. They don't stay backstage watching the show. That can be very dangerous, and in many cases has hurt people a lot when people were saying, oh look, I've never really actually seen the show. Well, and then they're standing right where the grid, the beam is going to come down from the scene change that they didn't know happened because they never saw the show before. So actors, you need to make sure that actors know that their place is not off stage, their place is into the green room and into the dressing room, which can be frustrating to them because they want to see their fellow actors perform. I understand that, but that's not where they belong. They belong off stage in the green room, yes? So again, something can be talked about when you talk about the space. Any kind of, if you run with cue lights, some theaters will have a system set up where they cue actors by turning a cue light on, or cue the orchestra, for instance, because the conductor can't really wear a headset because they're listening to the orchestra. What you'll do is you'll set up a little cue light for them so that when they're in standby, you turn the light on, and when they should go, you turn the light off. Yes, but that again is something that can be run, can be plugged in, can be manipulated prior to any kind of tech starting. Yes, on the Friday, or depending on when the tech's on Monday, then on Sunday. Yes, any kind of spiking of scenery, of wagons, flying scenery. When you're on the flies, you need to set an in spike, in other words, where it is when it hits the floor, and you also need to set an out spike, where it is where it can't be seen by the audience. All that can be done prior to tech rehearsals. Now, again, I'm going to tell you, a lot of times you're moving scenery in until tech rehearsal, and so you don't have time to do it before tech rehearsal, so a lot of times the first moments of tech rehearsals are literally spiking the moving wagons, but also spiking the flying scenery. Of course, you're not necessarily doing it in the time and space where the cues are supposed to be called, so you have to be very careful that you're not fouling one thing with the other. In other words, something doesn't fly in and hit a wagon that's not supposed to be there and wouldn't be there during the set, during the regular scene change, but just have to be there because you're spiking things. Furniture, whatever you need to spike. Again, even if you have a one set that never changes, spike the scenery. Somebody's going to come in accidentally and mop the floor and move the scenery, move the desk or move the couch, and then you put it back sort of where it was, and suddenly this light that was focused on the couch is now focused on the floor beside the couch. Yes. So just because it doesn't necessarily move doesn't mean it doesn't necessarily need to be spiked. Again, spiking something, usually you just use a little L, take 2 pieces of tape, make an L out of it, put it back on the upstage corner so the audience can't see it. If you need glow tape, I may say glow tape a billion times during this lecture, put glow tape on things so that people can see. It is far better to have a runway full of glow tape so that actors are safe than it is to have one less piece of glow tape and have somebody trip over a step, or don't see a couch, or because again, especially if you're going to do blackouts for your scene changes, people aren't actors aren't magicians. They can't see in the dark any better than anybody else can see in the dark. It's just that usually because set pieces haven't moved, they can see in the dark. Well, I'll tell the story now. It goes in another place in the lecture, but one of the funniest occurrences, we had an actor, unfortunately, fortunately, because I learned as part of this lecture, we had an actor who was blind. And so we're all set up, text ready to go, we've got all the cues recorded, the show's gonna start, the music is playing, the lights fade to black, and then they fade up, which is the actor's cue to enter, the lights coming up. Did I mention the actor was blind? So we're sitting there and the lights go down, the lights come up, and there's no actor. So I said, Peter, you need to make your entrance when the lights come up. And as I was saying it, of course, I realized Peter can't see the lights come up because, did I mention he's blind? So we have to have an assistant stage manager stand back there and say, okay, the lights are up, go. Now, he was blind, but because the set never moved, he walked out on stage, and very daring on his part, but he had the stage memorized. He would walk 8 steps to his place, turn around, walk 3 steps, and sit in the chair. The audience never do it. But again, sometimes things happen like that you're unprepared for. So you're going to have some surprises in tech rehearsals. Let's just put it that way. Have places for actors to sit. Again, if depending on how many people are on the show, if everybody's on the stage the whole show, then you're set. But at some point, actors are going to leave the stage and are going to need some place to congregate. If you've got a green room, if you've got a dressing room, that's where they go. If you've got a hallway, put some chairs and that sort of stuff. Give them some place to go so that they can relax while they're not on stage. And you may need to set up some chairs or tables, that sort of thing, for them to do that, yes? If you need some sort of signage to say, here's the direction to the green room, here's the direction to the crossover, here's how to get from stage right to stage left. A lot of times you may have something happen in a pit, and a lot of actors aren't accustomed to how to get to the pit, or you may have an entrance from the front of house. Have signs that tell actors, this is the way to the front of the house, this door goes to the front of the house, that sort of thing, so that, again, things that can be prepared long before the tech rehearsal begins, just start thinking about those things and getting those things accomplished. If there are traps on the stage, make sure they work. Make sure they can open and close. Better to do it on Friday when you need to fix it than on Saturday when you can't, it's taking everybody's time, yes? But also make sure that you have marked it, indicated it with, again, very large pieces of white tape and or glow tape so that actors know where there's a hole. Because again, sometimes when that hole is not there, that's a bad thing. Now, again, with doors and traps, you want to tape both sides of the door or trap. So when the door is open, if the door is open, then you don't have this piece of tape, you can just see the wall of the door or the trap, so you know that if there's 2 pieces of tape, the trap is closed or the door is closed. If you have 1 piece of tape, the door is open or the trap is open. Hopefully that makes some sense. Yes. There's a lot of theaters require a number line, or especially if there's dance in the show and proceeding march, go ahead and lay the number line. Make sure your 0 is center, make sure that thing is laid down and taped before tech rehearsal starts. So again, it's a waste of time in tech rehearsals to do things during tech rehearsal that you can have done before the tech rehearsal begins. How you control the house lights can be in a very, again, the first thing's gonna happen in the show is you're gonna say, okay, the house lights fade to black and we start the show. In some theaters, like our theater, the house lights are part of the light plot. So the control of the light of the house lights is very easy. However, we do have some work lights that are controlled separately by a little switch on the wall that a lot of times people forget to turn the switch on the wall for the work lights to go off. And so you get in the first cue of the show, which is supposed to be a blackout, and the thing is bright as day. So learn how to make the theater go black. Learn how sometimes there's an automated system that is totally separate from your light board, that is just something that can be controlled usually from where the stage manager or the light board operator are. Sometimes you actually have to have a separate person that runs the house lights. So a person sitting in the booth at a table where the house lights are run. So you need to know how the house lights work, how to get it on and off. Know that information before you walk in the first rehearsal. It'll save you 10 minutes trying to figure out how to turn the house lights off. And again, how to get control of the house lights. A lot of times there's a little key that you have to turn in order to take control of the light. All that sort of stuff can be figured out before you begin. Yes? So all the things we've talked about up to now are things that should be done, accomplished well before you get into the actual tech rehearsal process. Now, one of the things that you should do the day of the tech rehearsal is have a dimmer check. Probably the first thing you need to do when you walk in the door is just have somebody sit at the lighting board and just have them take 5 minutes to go through all the dimmers in the whole show and make sure that nothing is falling out of focus or that the lamp is blown, because the best time to fix it is now. Lights fall out of focus. Scenery hits lights, knocks them out of focus. If scenery's been loaded in, it's called a carpenter focus. It happens all the time. It's better to get it fixed now before you get into the tech rehearsal than try and suddenly, why isn't there a light here? Well, it's because this person's here and you have to stop everything in rehearsal in order to focus the light. Yes. So get it all done before things get underway. Do that little dimmer check. It's a 5-minute little thing that can save you hours in the end of the rehearsal. All right, there are going to be all kind of people. Boy, you talk about people. People are going to be coming in and around. They all have their own jobs. They're all focused on their own jobs. They all think their job is the most important. The worst of them are the actors who think their job is the most important. And for the show, it is, and for rehearsals, it is. The problem is the tech rehearsal, not so much. And so the actor is going, there's some care and feeding of actors that has to happen in tech rehearsals. Oftentimes, they will feel left alone. Again, the director has been their buddy, their dad, their mom, their consort. And suddenly they've been jilted for this, this director has left them to have an affair with the lighting designer and the sound designer, and doesn't care about the actors anymore. There's a feeling of loss that actors go through in a tech rehearsal. I promise you it happens. So you need to be aware that this is gonna happen, that and some actors like to throw little fits because they are not the center of attention. Even though they are the center of attention, it's just that it's not as obvious as it was during the tech rehearsals, that sort of thing. You're gonna have master electricians who are running around, fixing problems. You're gonna have electricians that are taping things to the floor. Again, should have been done beforehand, but again, you never really know where everything needs to be taped and that sort of thing. You've got light board operators, you've got soundboard operators. Again, hopefully they have been trained on their individual boards and know how they work before you get to tech rehearsal. But trust me, if there's a lacking in their training, you're gonna find out probably the first cue is gonna be, how do I make this happen? Oh, there you go, I forgot to tell you that. The stage manager, it's a stage manager's meeting. This is hard for people to understand, especially directors to understand. All meetings, really, all rehearsals are stage manager's rehearsal. The stage manager is the person who's gonna call the show. Again, I'm gonna say this many times in this lecture. The purpose of the tech rehearsal is to integrate the cues into the run of the show. And the best and easiest way to do that is to make sure the stage manager has them correctly written in their prompt script. And so whatever time it takes to go through the process of getting the cues recorded correctly in the prompt script has to be the focus. That's what we're here for, is to get the stage manager. Now, I'm going to talk about stage manager as a singular thing for the rest of the lecture, but let me just tell you, I've been involved in some productions. There was an opera that I went to in New York where there were 7 stage managers. One of them who called the deck cue, one of them called the fly cue, one of them called the spot cue, one of them they called the pyro cues. There were 7 different people whose responsibility was to call the show, but it was so complicated that no one person could do all the calling. So there was a production stage manager who was sort of mostly just listening to make sure everything was happening correctly and filled in if there were, somebody fell behind or something happened. But there were 7 different stage managers to call every different aspect of the show, including making sure there was one stage manager whose job it was to make sure the singer was on stage. That was their job. But if that stage manager wasn't there, again, you don't have a singer on stage. I'm not gonna say anything else about that. Anyway, before we get into it too much, here's a little look at the production tech process at the Goodman Theatre, just to give you a taste of what it's like. Enjoy.
which is short for technical rehearsal, is the time when we move the show from a rehearsal room into the theater, and we integrate lighting, sound, the scenery and props, as well as in this case, video projections and costumes.
We've been rehearsing the play for about 8 weeks. The play is twice as long as most plays, and we ended up having a technical rehearsal that was about twice as long. Normally it's about 4 days, and here it was at least 8 days, although you continue to work on the show technically once you're in front of an audience because changes are being made. Part of tech is preparation, is that you work for months and months and months with the lighting designer, the sound designers, the projection designers, costumes to plan for tech. Tech can be a notoriously chaotic period of time where everybody's getting thrown all of these elements. You've got wigs and you've got microphones and you've got lighting cues. And in this case, because it's been such an epic production, it's been extraordinarily well planned.
It's been an incredibly smooth process. It really is a credit to the stage management team because we've planned the production in the rehearsal room. The actors are moving around in an environment where we're imagining all of the things that they will then see on stage. All of the scenery, all of the moving, in this case, moving panels, moving walls, costume changes, wig changes. And the stage management team has recorded and planned. It's like going to war. I mean, coming to a process like this. We have 8 or 9 days of tech, but truly we're making the most of every single minute of that time. And the stage management team is so well prepared that we're able to execute it very smoothly.
And I think I'd explain the stage management concept because it's something that most people don't quite understand, and it is probably the most important element once the production opens up. So it goes in the hands of a team led by a production stage manager and other stage managers whose job it is to run the show. It's so complicated, it all gets recorded in a master book, and then the stage manager sits behind a console and basically for, in this case, over 5 hours, says lights 1 go, sound 2 go, projections 1 go, lights go. And it's a constant set of cueing that the stage manager's done. But this has been actually a fairly smooth process because we've done a lot of planning in advance.
And I think what's unique about technical rehearsals in the theater is that there's a really dynamic conversation happening the whole time between the artists involved. You will oftentimes be in a situation where there's a, let's say, transition happening on stage between one scene and another. And the sound designer has one idea, and the lighting designer has a different idea. And what happens in a tech process where the artists are really listening to each other is that the directors are in part there to kind of referee and oversee those conversations and not simply to deliver decisions, but to also listen to all the great ideas in the room and just help pick between them and align them together. Our design team are such professionals, they're so brilliant that their intuitions are great. And in part, it's kind of like playing music together. It's like, you know, almost like improvised music where you really have a group of artists listening to one another, trying things out, talking to one another, planning something and then presenting it to others. And in that way, it can become extremely creative and fertile as a place for even new ideas to come up.
Yeah, it's tricky because, you know, the common perception is of the director as a pure authoritarian voice, you know, that the director is the person telling everybody what to do at all times. You know, at its most cliche, there's the fact that people think a director says, stand here, stand there, move there, do this, which is quite the contrary. You're in collaboration constantly with people. It is true that we are kind of the generals with the overall battle in mind. But it's also an incredible process I always think of every time I ever work on something, that the best experiences in the theater, the best experiences in tech are the ability to have a plan and then be willing to let that plan go in favor of someone's better idea.
That's exactly my philosophy as well. Maybe that's why we seem to be working together.
Yeah, I think so.
Because my philosophy is always that the best idea in the room wins, and that my job, among other things, is to listen for the best idea in the room, as well as to come in with a battle plan.
Yes.
This is, among other things, an actor's play. It's a literary play, it's an adaptation of a novel, but it really is a showcase for actors, and I'm just really excited to hand the play over to this company of actors.
Excellent. So that was featuring the director and the lighting designer mostly. You could tell that they seemed to get along. They seem to be respectful of one another, so that's good. But the lighting designer and the director really are, and the sound designer to a lesser degree, but the relationship between the director and the lighting designer really is going to determine how well the tech rehearsal goes. If the lighting designer is turning on cues that the director is appreciating, it's going to go well. If the lighting designer is creating looks that the director are surprised to the director, or is not what the director was anticipating things looking like, there may be some problems. Things may come to a halt as you slowly re-cue the show. Again, for the most part, tech rehearsals are the first time that lighting designers have had a chance, and everyone has had a chance to see the scenery, the lights, the costume. Well, the costume is going to be added later. But it's the first time for everyone to see the design of the show coming together. And because the set has been around for a while and has been painted, hopefully, and is flying and working and operating correctly, again, that's another thing that can really cause the tech rehearsal to come to a grind. If suddenly a caster falls off, or if a curtain rips, or things like that, things that go wrong just moving scenery. Looks that the lighting designer is creating can really cause consternation if the lighting designer and the director have not really communicated during the tech process, during the pre-production process. And so that's why it's very important to have had a lot of visual research so the director is anticipating what you're going to present to them. Yes? Now, there's also typically a producer around somewhere. The producer's role is mostly they run around trying to figure out what's going wrong. Why is this taking so long? Why am I having to spend all this extra money on overtime, that sort of stuff. The producer is the person, you can tell the producer because they're the person pulling their hair out. Everybody else is working hard and focused on the job at hand. The producer has no job other than to worry about everything else that's going on. And so occasionally it's just best to buy the producer a bottle of scotch and say, we'll see you at the bar later. But just realize there's a producer running around like a chicken with their head cut off, and especially some producers who are adamant about being involved in the process, they will cause you more pain and agony than they will cause you. If things are going well, producers don't come around. It's when things are going poorly that suddenly the producer's going to stick his head and say, how things going? Well, they're sticking their head in there saying how things are going because things aren't going well. If things are going well, everybody knows it. Everybody's laughing. Yes, had a good time. So dealing with those type of people, understanding the relationships between those people and their job and their importance. Again, you should treat everyone like they are the most important person, because at some point the master electrician may become the most important person on that stage. At some point, the crew member who has to lock the wagon down may become the most important person in the shift. Yes, do whatever you can to make sure that person can find their mark. Yes, because otherwise, inevitably the show's going to come to a halt. You've got to have everybody on the same page. Yes. All right. There are 8 different types of cues that you can go through in a tech rehearsal process. Yes. We talked about the stage managers calling different aspects, but there are 8 different types of cues. Light cues are the most obvious. Again, they're generally represented in the prompt script with an L cue for the light cue, and generally it's a number because in the computer it's a number. Sound cues are the next most important cues that you're doing during a tech rehearsal. They're generally represented in the prompt script with an S cue, and I like to have them lettered because that way it's just a different sound. If you have, again, not that you would ever have light board operators that are not paying attention. If you're doing Wicked and you've got 6 billion cues, trust me, everybody's listening. If you're doing Tartuffe and you have 6 light cues, it gets a little rough. And so having a sound cue A and B and C, as opposed to a light cue 1 and 2 and 3, even if you didn't hear the light or sound, if it's a B or a C, you know it's not you as a light board operator. If you hear 1, 2, or 3, you know it's not you as a soundboard operator. So I would, in general, make that choice that light cues are numbered, sound cues are lettered. Yes, and if you have more than 26 sound cues, you just have AA and BB and CC. Yes, you just double letter them. Spot cues I would also letter, simply because lights and spots often go together. And spots, because they are run manually, will also oftentimes have off cues. Same thing with sound. You'll have fades. You'll have just not only an on cue or beginning the cue, you have a finishing the cue. I would say all light cues nowadays, the computer boards just have goes. They don't have ends. But spot cues you generally have to call, and again, sometimes you take the spot and you fade it, and sometimes it's just out. Same thing with sound. You either fade it or it's out, right? And again, the way the stage manager is going to call it, the GO word always goes last. So if you're standby, spot cue, C, fade, spot cue, C, fade, go. The go is when the fade happens. Spot cue, C, fade, if you want to go out, spot cue, D, out, spot cue, D, out, go. So everything happens on the word GO. Yes, and you spell GO unless you mean for people to GO. If you want them to GO, you say go. But you also have deck cues, shift cues, and again, you would typically you also have fly cues. The fly cues are the flying scenery on the fly lines. We talked about fly lines several months ago. It seems like. But then you also have wagons that shift. You have trap doors that may pop up and all that sort of thing. And so all those have to be coordinated. All those have to be choreographed. And again, a lot of times one of the problems with the stage, the shift may work perfectly, but then you add 20 actors on stage at the end of one and 20 actors at the beginning of the next scene, and that's where it becomes a problem. You got to get 20 people off before the shift can begin. So in other words, not everything goes together. The light cue may start and the sound cue may start at the beginning of the shift, and then once the actors are clear, the shift go happens. So maybe a separate call. The fly cue may go after the shift happens, so that the wagon is in place and marked before the last thing comes in is the fly, and then when the fly hits the ground, that's the go for the lights out. Yes? Again, I'll say this again probably later, but you need to plan either to have light for an off vista shift, in other words, some sort of blue light that people can see in to shift, or blackout. It's a choice. If you have to have any off vista shifts in the whole show, all of them need to be that way. It's setting up a language with the audience so the audience knows we're in a scene shift mode light. If you have a blackout for one shift, it should all be blackouts. Again, it's the language of the play you're telling, the story you're telling. When I go to black, the story's over. If you go to black every time and then suddenly you have a blue light shift, the audience is going to believe the play is still happening, because that's going to be different from the blackouts you have had before then. Yes? Again, same thing with the beginning and end of shows. If you're going to have a blackout at the beginning of the show, you got to have a blackout at the end of the show, so the audience knows it's over. If you don't have a blackout, you just fade to the show, to the scene, the end of the show. You fade out of the scene. So if the director wants it to be black at the end of the show, then it needs to go black at the beginning of the show, and black at the act changes. So again, you're talking the language of the play to the audience, so you're consistent as you go through. And again, not directors need to understand that. Lighting designers need to understand that. Everybody, a lot of people come up with different ways of doing that. So you got your FX cues. If you got smoke, if you got fog, if you got haze, you may need additional cues to make sure they're there. If it's just a haze machine, a lot of times the stage manager will just put beginning of their prompt script haze on, but it doesn't necessarily need a cue unless you turn it off for some reason. But if you have pyro effects, all that stuff, you do need cues in. And again, you just have an FX number, and I would again use letters for the pyro cues just to make sure they're not misunderstood with the deck cues, because the pyro cues can cause damage, especially if it's a pyro pot going off. Projection cues, again, numbers. Projections are becoming more and more popular nowadays. One of the big things about projectors, when you're doing a show, and this can be, you can kill an entire tech rehearsal process if the projections are not ready. And a lot of times projections aren't ready, but you need to project something. And the reason I say that is because a projector can't be dimmed. A projection is as bright as it is. And if you start turning lights on, you're going to dim the intensity of the projection. Lights are going to bounce and hit the screen or whatever it is that is hitting. And so the intensity of the projection is going to dominate how bright the light cues can be. And if you don't have projections on, you don't know the answer to how light cues can be. So again, even if you don't have the exact projection, have something that's a similar intensity, project things from a projector so that you can, and again, the projector can be set up beforehand. You shouldn't do that as part of your tech rehearsal. You should hang or rig your projector, but many times I've seen tech rehearsals where you spend half the tech rehearsal getting the projector to work. The last thing is cueing the actors and cueing the orchestra. Again, cue lights are often used for this, but you need to come up with some sort of process so the conductor knows to start. I've been in many productions where everybody's like, okay, we're ready to go. How do we tell the conductor we're ready to go? The show doesn't start until the conductor goes, done. So you got to come up with something. Would you just yell from the wings, go? Probably not the best choice, but not unheard of. So having some sort of cue system and some sort of, it may just be your cell phone. Maybe you just on the cell phone, you're saying, okay, go, and you say, okay, if that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do, yes? One of the things that, a couple things, there are gonna be times in the tech rehearsal where you have to work on light cues. It's the first time for most people that you've seen the scenery all together with everything, even if the cues to the show have been pre-written. The line designer needs to have gone to a tech rehearsal, or to a run-through of the show before the tech rehearsal. They need to have gone through with their script and at least figured out where they think the cues to the show go. Sound designer, same thing, but the sound designer really can get the sense of the show just reading it. Lighting designers, because actors move in space, you need to know when an actor's in what sort of part of the stage and what area they're in and what light to bring up. Make those notes, and you can go through and you can sort of pre-record cues, but intensity, it's a ballpark guess. Having an actor, sometimes an actor is on stage, but you just think they're standing there, scratching their nose because they're not saying anything, but they're actually on the stage. So a lot of times, it's like, oh, well, I didn't know that person was there. They weren't there that day. They were sick, and so the assistant stage manager was reading their lines, and you didn't know where they were. Yes. So there's going to be changes in the light cues as you go. You want to. I prefer, when I'm doing a show, to have the lighting designer make notes. If the lighting designer can accomplish the change in the cue by just writing it down, say light cue 7, add area D, and go on with the rehearsal. If the director trusts the lighting designer to do that, I found that's typically a better way to run rehearsal. In some situations, especially in the larger professional situations, nothing changes until the cue's right. Until you have everything, the smoke just right, everything has got to be just right for everybody satisfied, so you move. So especially if you've got smoke in the cue, you got to wait for it to dissipate in order for you to go back and run the cue. I've seen people do all-day tech rehearsal at the ASF on Christmas Carol, and they got through the first cue of the show in 8 hours. Welcome to tech rehearsal. Sound cues, same thing, even though they've been pre-recorded. How the sound level is going to need to be set. Yes. Let's talk about actors and marking. An actor that isn't performing full out is what's called marking the show. In tech rehearsals, there are going to be points in the rehearsal where you go over and over and over the same sequence over and over again, especially the beginning and end of acts, because those are where all the cues wind up being. All the sound cues, all the light cues start getting bounced on top of each other, and levels need to be set, and times need to be shifted, and all that sort of stuff. So the actor may do the same scene, same words 10 times. The problem is, after about the second time, the actor sort of gets tired of doing it full voice, and so they do it half voice. Well, if the sound designer is on the mixing board and is mixing the sound of the orchestra with the sound of the actor, and the actor is marking it, opening or whenever the actor decides to go full voice, the balance is going to be off. And so as hard as it is for actors to understand, you need to keep an ear out for actors who are marking it. Same thing in dance. Now, sometimes it's okay. All right, great. We've got the sound level set. We're doing lights, or we're doing the shift, or we're doing other stuff. Actors, you can mark this. Because again, especially you don't want people to hurt themselves. Singing can cause injury. Dancing can cause injury. Walking can cause injury. So having actors who you can let the actor know, you can mark this. Please don't go full out. Especially things like stage combat, that sort of stuff. Just mark the actions. We know what's going to happen. We're happy with this, but we need to work on the shift, or we need to work on the smoke, or we need to work on stuff that doesn't necessarily involve the actors going full out. Now, if the actor needs to go full out, you need to say, don't mark this. Go full out on this for this run. Yes, so just be aware of that. So we talked about the 8 cues that you can go through. Again, fly cues, shifts can be incredibly dangerous. So always run any cue you're going to do with a shift of scenery, run it in light first. Let everybody on stage know what's happening, where the wagons come from, where the drops are coming from, where the traps are opening. Run it in light before you run it in the blackout or in the shift light. Yes? Here's a little video talking about the actor's experience on stage. Enjoy this.
A piece of the process, tech rehearsal.
Tech is when the actors and the play meet everything that's technical about the production. The set, costumes, although those won't happen on the first day, lights, sound, all of the things that finesse a production. This is where the two meet.
We'll have 2 days of this. We'll do Saturday and Monday, and then on Tuesday we'll add costumes. It's actually a really exciting time because it sort of starts coming all coming together.
Another rule about tech, and John, you can tell me that I'm right. The first cue always takes at least 45 minutes.
Check.
Doesn't it?
Check.
Okay, cast, let's go to places for top of show. And we'll probably have to do the top a few times for timing with Dana and Sammy, okay?
First cue, 45 minutes. Mark my words.
We're gonna try it again.
They must be having trouble hearing over this.
Well, I think nobody expected the first cue.
Ah! They were anticipating our incompetence. That's right.
So we were all just back in.
I know. I mean, usually it's 45 minutes.
Let's take 10. 10 minutes. Let's take a 10-minute break. 10.
Going really well. I was very, very surprised about the first cue. And so was the rest of the cast.
Whatever it is, we'll work it out.
You've bankrupted the firm. The firm is bankrupt. What have you done with the money?
It's been great. This has been a very easy process. And, good people, good director, good play. So far so good.
You can see the actors bored to tears. They did the whole video just based on this tech rehearsal because they had nothing better to do because they knew he wasn't going to be performing that day. He's going to be having tech rehearsal. But keep it light. You know, as best you can, bring candy, bring snacks, bring donuts, anything you can do to lighten the air because it can get incredibly tense. Know when you recognize sometimes it's just better to take a break, even if it's not time to take a break. Take a break. All right, everybody, let's take 10. Even if you just took 10 minutes ago, it gives the lighting designer or the sound designer or the flyman 10 minutes to fix or to focus or to think or just to go cry. Whatever they need to do in order to get their mind back in the right place so that we can go through and do this. And again, if the answer is skip it, right? Now, everybody may panic, but at least you've got the rest of the show done and you know what to concentrate on in the evening between now and the next rehearsal. Tech rehearsal is not the time to build scenery. It's not the time to wire practicals. It's not the time to paint scenery. It's not the time for actors and directors to have discussions about character development. It's not the time to choreograph things. Now, sometimes you need to space things. I mean, again, if the first time you've had a drop on stage, the first time you've had a wagon on stage, sure. Tell the dancers where to stand, where to come in, how to get there, all that sort of stuff. But you don't choreograph. There's a difference between spacing and choreographing. Yes, you can tell when the choreographer has moved from spacing to on this beat, do this move. That's choreographing. Yes, and so you need to, as a stage manager, you need to be aware. As a director, you need to be aware that people can, in their own little fiefdoms, take control of a rehearsal and then suddenly you're like, what happened in the last 3 hours? Well, we choreographed the show, which is great for the choreography, not so great for the lighting and the sound and the other elements of the show, which again, tech rehearsals, have I said this? Tech rehearsals are about integrating the cues into the show. It's not about choreographing the show. Yes, that's for other things. Now, again, summer stock is always the exception. Everything goes. Everything's all at once. People are choreographing, people are lighting, you got people painting scenery on top. Anyway, it's a cluster. All right, let's talk about several different types of tech rehearsals. It is always best, in my experience, to do what I call a paper tech. A paper tech is when the stage manager and the lighting designer sit down and figure out where the cues are in the script. The stage manager writes in the prompt script. Sometimes the director is essential to that meeting. Sometimes the director can be superfluous to that meeting. Here's a little video talking about this young lady's experience in paper tech.
Hi, my name's Catherine, and I'm going to talk to you about how to prepare for your tech rehearsal as a stage manager. What you need to do before your tech rehearsal is to sit down with your director and have what's called a paper tech. You're going to tech through the show on paper, go through your script, and know where you want to put every sound cue and every lighting cue and what you want those lighting cues to look like. I usually start by creating a lighting cue sheet, which very simply is a table with 4 columns. First column, your cue number. You're going to leave that blank until your tech. Your technician, as they build the lighting cues, will tell you what cue number each cue is. Second column, where the cue happens. Where specifically in the script, what page, what line, what word you want those lights to change on. Third column, what does this cue do? Is it a blackout? Is it a transition light? Is it exactly what you want to see happen on stage? Be as specific as you can. The more specific you are, the easier it is for your technician to build a light that you're looking for. The fourth column is length of the cue. Is it a quick lighting change? Is it a snap, 0 seconds, all of a sudden there's light on stage? Or is it a very slow fade that the audience barely notices, like a 60-second cue? Put in a number there that you think might be right. It's very easy to change it and fix it during your tech, but just a rough idea is great. So once you've got your lighting cue sheet all done, you want to put your cues in your prompt script. Your prompt script is the script you're going to use to call the show. You're going to put all the lighting and all the sound cues into your prompt script, making sure that you've got it very specific exactly where you want to call each cue. Once paper tech is done, also go through your script and put in standbys. Standby is when you tell the technician, hey, get ready, here comes a cue. Standby lights 5, or standby lights 5 and sound 4. They don't know your show very well, so you need to let them know that a cue is coming up, so that they're ready to hit the button as soon as you say the word go. It's best if you can bring your sound cues to your technician on a USB stick. WAV files are the preferred type of file rather than MP3. Also bring your cues on a CD because it's always great to have a backup. Now, if you don't have a stage manager for your show, here's a couple helpful hints to help out your technician. Bring a clean copy of your script. Even if you've done this show in 3 other fringes, it's great for your technician to have a clean copy because the cue numbers might not be the same as the last time you did the show, or your technician might have a way of writing it that makes sense to them and the previous technician's method maybe doesn't work for them. If you have anything specific in your script that is highlighted for your technician, technicians are working under dim light and often blue light. Choose a blue or a pink highlighter as opposed to yellow. Yellow doesn't show up under blue light very well. Because you don't have a stage manager calling your show and your technician doesn't know the show very well, it's extra important to make sure you get a run of your show done during your tech rehearsal so that your technician has the opportunity to see your show before there's a whole audience in the room. When you're calling a show, it's very important to be very specific in how you word your cues. You're going to say stand by lights 5 and sound 4. So they know to be prepared for a lighting cue and a sound cue. When it comes to actually calling the cue, you want to say lights 5 go or sound 4 go. Start with which board they're getting ready for, the cue number, and then the word go. You always finish with the word go because when you say go, they're gonna hit the button. So lights, 5, go. I hope this was helpful and informative in helping you prepare for your technical rehearsal, and I hope it goes extremely well.
Cool, cool. Again, doing a little cue sheet like that is great. Having the list of where the cues go, but again, the line designer may bring in additional artistic cues that go in there. But again, if you've got it on your computer, you just readjust and that sort of stuff. A dry tech is when you have everybody in their positions. The spotlight operators, the lightboard operators, the soundboard operators, the stage managers. Everybody's in their positions and everybody is doing their job except for the actors. That way you can practice the shifts, you can fly the scenery in, you can see how things work. You can make sure you can see on stage, make sure everything's glow taped. Solve as many problems as you can before you start adding actors to the stage. Now, some people call actors on stage a wet tech. Some people call it a cue to cue. That's what I call it. A cue to cue is, again, when you just go from one cue in the sequence of cues in the show to the next. My rule of thumb is 5 pages. If you're not going to jump at least 5 pages, don't stop the action. Because by the time you get everybody stopped and restarted and figured out where you're going, it's going to be 4 minutes. So just if it's going to be 4 pages or less, just let them run their action, get their dialogue down, learn their lines, and then you'll see how the shift goes, the cues go. Again, if it's going to be 5 pages or more, especially if it's going to be 10 pages or more, it might be well worth stopping and just saying, okay, we're moving to the end of the act or the end of the play, whatever we're going to for the next sequence of cues. Again, that's just up for you to call. Again, here's a little video about some high school students that are doing it for Jesus Christ Superstar.
We're here on Tech Sunday. We go cue to cue, which means not performing the show, but just going from each light cue to the next, skipping sections and getting that all done.
So what we're going to do is, last night we programmed all of the light cues as far as kind of what we want them to be, and then today the actors will be on the set and we will go from cue to cue to see, are the light levels right, is it the right mixture, is everybody visible, is there any dark spots, and then work on how the cues transition one cue into another. And it's a lot of hurry up and waiting for the cast. It's a big day. We've had 8 weeks of rehearsal, and today is the day for our lighting person and our backstage people to start joining us and try to get everything learned. They have a week to get everything done.
So we've got to hang all the lights that go in those special locations. As long as you have like a light plot, you know where all the lights are, where they're pointing. You can literally just type in what number of light you want and say, I want it at 50%, I want it to be yellow, and record it as a cue. Once you started the show, it's really just go, go, go. When the time comes, you just press that button and let it roll. But actually getting them to be the right timing and all that is the more difficult part, especially in a show like this, because it's all music.
How do you decide what the levels are for each light?
Can we see them on stage? And does it create the mood that we want for the scene? The levels are important for that sort of thing.
For me, it's about where the focus is. If there's a lot of people on stage, I want to light the areas where the focus should be. When the lepers arrive, the lighting becomes kind of a sickening purpley green to just try to help invoke each song, and that we're in a different location, a different emotion, that there's something different going on.
Can you bring it a little hotter? Okay, let's add that to this cue.
Okay.
Let's definitely add that to this cue.
Did that come up?
No,
Oh, okay.
two on the sides came up, but that's better.
Okay.
Okay, no, that's better. Yep, add that.
Oh, I really hope you love this show as much as I do. I have loved this show for a very, very long time, since I was young, and I am looking forward to sharing it with everyone, so I hope everyone enjoys it as much as I do.
Cool, you can see there that the actors are running around, people are adjusting lights and things like that. So it is chaotic. there needs to be, let me just tell you real quick the difference between a motivated light cue and an unmotivated light cue. If you have somebody walk into a room and flip a switch and lights change, that is a motivated light cue. If somebody opens a refrigerator and the light is in the refrigerator and the lights come on, that's a motivated light cue. If you just have somebody walk into a room and suddenly things start, the two characters fall in love and suddenly the room becomes pink or glow with their love, their passion, that's an unmotivated light cue. It is a light cue that is motivated by the emotion of the scene, but it is not motivated by something practical on the stage. Usually unmotivated light cues take longer time, 10, 15 seconds. Motivated light cues are usually immediate as the cue happens with what happened on the stage. Yes. The next step, once you've got the cues all in the book and the show's running great, then you add costumes. Oh man, that sounded easy, didn't it? You just add costumes. Except that, of course, costumes mean costume changes. And costumes have colors. And costumes have trains that wagons roll over and people step on and things like that. And so again, just because it sounds easy, the costumes can be just as big a shift in the environment as adding the sound and lights. You also may need to have different places, little dressing rooms set up off stage for quick changes to happen. Matter of fact, maybe the quick change happens on stage, and so you may need to change the light cue on stage so that it's not shining on the actor who's going to be semi-naked behind a blanket or something. Yes. So again, costumes is a whole other dynamic, and you may find that your intensities are too bright or not bright enough because costumes may be all black. And you may need to add light energy to your cues. It can change the things in the cues. Typically not sound cues, typically not scene shift cues, although again, timing of scene shift cues may have to depend upon the quickness of actors coming on and off stage, that sort of thing. But that's a whole nother level. In theater, we have these things called 10 out of 12. It's an equity actor thing, but it also happens to be in a lot of other theaters simply because they typically will follow equity rules if they have any equity members ever. 10 out of 12, you can have 2 10 out of 12s in the course of rehearsal. Usually they're used for tech rehearsals, and that means that there's a 12-hour period, usually from noon to midnight, sometimes from 11 to 11, that you can rehearse 10 of those 12 hours. So in other words, you might rehearse from noon until 6, have 6 to 8 as dinner, and then 8 to midnight be the second half of rehearsal, that sort of thing, yes? But that's a 10 out of 12. Previews, oh well, first of all, we'll end it here. What are we at, time-wise?
47.
Okay, we'll fit it in. Here's a little video from Dirty Dancing.
Welcome back. Our whole production creative team is here in the theater, and they're just working on lighting and making our set look beautiful, and the sound right now. This is our second week into rehearsals on the stage, so have a look and enjoy watching us get ready for our previews.
Everyone's loading in, so there's a lot of carpentry work being done. As you can see, the house is gorgeous. You can just get a sense of just how expansive the entire production is.
The scale of Dirty Dancing is, how can one describe it? It's enormous. Dirty Dancing, I've been involved in Phantom of the Opera, Lion King, many of the major musicals around the world, and other large-scale operas outdoors, the Sydney Olympic Games, but Dirty Dancing, wow.
The show is massive for us. Technically, it's enormous.
The show is big. I mean, there's 106 scenes in the show, and with this show, quite a lot of the scenes run into each other, so it flows from one scene to another without necessarily being a conventional theatrical piece.
And we're just tackling the most difficult part for us, which is the log, the lake, the field. It's great fun to work with it. It's all about timing.
The lights to coincide with the sound and to coincide with the automation, the auto flies, things that are happening on the deck, the actors entering, the actors exiting.
We have over 690 automation axes moves in the show. The show never stops. From the moment you walk into the theatre to the moment you leave, you're abuzz with the rest of the cast.
This controls the fly automation, so all of our flying scenery. Standing by, Steve, if you're clear.
Clear, go ahead out.
And that's the forward limit.
That is the forward limit, yes.
We have more pieces flying in, flying out, going, tracking on, turning, lifting.
We have the inner and the outer. They go up and down like this and counterclockwise and clockwise, and they can actually go like in opposite directions of each other.
We not only have standard scenery and props and costumes, but we have cutting-edge technology used in our sound and also our audio-visual aspect.
It's a brand new lighting console in the very still early stages of development, and Andy's working the bugs out of it.
Well, there's a live band, which is a 9-piece band, so sometimes play in the substage, sometimes play on stage, sometimes some on stage, some in the pit.
This is the room where our live band is going to be performing underneath the stage during the show. And this is going to be all channeled up, which I think is amazing. I've never seen a live band with a pit that was in the basement.
I am the choreographer. There is a Latin ballroom choreographer. There is an associate choreographer. There is an associate Latin ballroom choreographer. There is a resident choreographer and a dance captain and deputy dance captain. So it's in good hands.
It's all a brand new sequence we're putting in with new music and a new voiceover, and we just got to get everybody on the same page with it.
Then you go back and you start again on the 11th 8, which is the 9th after the intro, and that seems to make sense. It's the beginning of a new phrase.
Correct. It is the beginning of that.
Something that shouldn't be overlooked on this show are the costumes. There is a significant number of costumes. The first 20 minutes like running a marathon backstage. The cast are constantly on, off, wigs on, shoes on, up, down, wigs. It just doesn't stop.
Act 1 will all take place on desk because there's no time whatsoever to do anything else.
So these are our costumes. So these are like all 50s and 60s style dresses. Ah, this is mine. Yeah.
I need that on stage.
Thanks for joining us again today, and next time you check in with us, we'll be doing our final dress rehearsal for friends and family in 18 days. And I'm a little bit nervous about it, but I think it's gonna be fine. So we'll check back in with you then. Thanks for joining us today, and I'll see you next time.
Obviously, that's the money. That is the money. If you're working on that show, you are eating right. Yes? Obviously, the next step in the process is the preview of the shows. Again, previews are a time when audiences are there so the actors can get the sense of the way the audience is going to react, but it's still a time for you as a director, as a designer, as a stage manager to tighten your craft, to learn the calls tighter, to tighten the cues that may or may not be there, to take some lights that are stuck in a cue, take them out, to add a light if you need to add a light to a certain cue. Sound designers who may need to adjust sound levels based upon the size of an audience that's there. In other words, you may not have anticipated 250 people talking or laughing during a sound cue. So there, again, you're going to find out things in the previews that are going to change your approach to the play. All right. Quickly, let's talk about touring. There are 4 types of tours. There's the national tour. National tours are for shows that are on Broadway currently. They generally have what are called sit-downs. A sit-down is where you go to a theater and perform the show for a week or 2, or a month, or 6 months. That's a sit-down. And so if you have a national tour, those are the type of theaters you're going to go to. Here's a video of the national tour of Wicked, for instance.
What's important for me regarding Wicked was if I was going to leave New York and if I was going to leave a Broadway career, I wanted to make sure that I was with a show that was Broadway quality. I came out here for a year and it's 4 years later. That's how proud I am. Absolutely love it. I think the story's great. It's a spectacle. So, right now we're unloading 13 trucks to put the show up. It takes about 30 hours to put in. So it's a big show. But on top of that, it's got a story that has such heart to it that, you know, I think that's really what caught me by surprise. On the road, because we change cities every month or so, we get to know a city. So what's kind of great is that, you know, so we bring Wicked to St. Louis, and we get to experience new restaurants, we get to experience, you know, museums of that city, sports events of that city, all of that kind of stuff. And so people come in and they're all like energized and jazzed up, which helps us put on a really good show on the road. What I love about this cast in particular right now is that they're really good actors. We have really good actors. Sometimes you have really good singers that aren't, you know, great at acting, or really good dancers that aren't great at acting. We have a really big group of triple threats. I'm really excited about the show right now. It's in great shape. People are really energized. We have a company that really wants to be doing this. We're lucky.
Again, as with the Dirty Dancing, very complicated show. Again, some shows will have pre-Broadway shows. For instance, Wicked did a show in San Francisco first and then moved to Broadway. Sometimes they will do a tour during that process. Wicked didn't, but some shows will tour around before they get to Broadway. Some shows like Hamilton had a pre-Broadway at the Public Theater and then just moved to Broadway. Some shows, like Lion King, just opened on Broadway. They just knew that was going to be a hit, so they just did it on Broadway. So some shows have pre-Broadway shows and post-Broadway tours. And you're going to be staying in hotels and have per diem and all that fun stuff. A regional tour is a show that usually has a couple of buses and a couple of trucks. The Broadway tour, I think Wicked said he had 13 trucks. On a regional tour, you're probably gonna have 3, maybe 4 trucks. One's gonna be silent, one's gonna be light, one's gonna be costumes, one's gonna be set. Usually set and costumes, depending on how many there are, can be combined. But the nice thing is that they travel with their own lighting equipment, and so for on-stage lighting, it's already set. The lighting front of house is gonna depend upon the lights that are there, and so you still may need to do some changes in the queuing. If you have a sit-down, you're going to have a couple of days to tech the show before it starts. If you have a regional tour, it may be that you start loading in at 8 a.m. and around 4 the actors appear on stage and you have sort of a quasi-tech rehearsal with the actors on stage, and there's a 7:30 show. And again, regional tours may have 2 or 3 shows in a row, but for the most part, they're one-nighters. The next kind of tour is what I'm going to call it a bus and truck tour. It's literally where you have one bus and one truck. You generally don't travel with your own lights or your own sound. You use the house sound and the house lights. And then you travel with the actors and the technicians all travel in the same bus. And if your production manager has been kind to you, you will drive 2 or 3 hours from one stop to the next. You may also find that your production manager has been unkind to you and your show gets done at 10 o'clock. The strike is over at 1 a.m. and you have to drive 8 hours through the night, which gets you to your next location at 9 with an 8 o'clock load in. You just do what you can. Yes, you didn't make the schedule, but that's the schedule you come up with. Yes, but that's a bus and truck tour. It can be very daunting. Then the last thing is just a local tour. A local tour is like the Montgomery Ballet going out to Alexander City. And again, it may be that you travel with your own sets and your lights, sometimes the cages especially. And generally you go over that morning, you set things up, the dancers show up that afternoon, you do the ballet and you come back that night. It's a one-day gig. Sometimes you do a couple shows, but for the most part that's called a local tour, where you just are out and in the same vicinity that you started that day. But all of them will depend on the way or how well you have organized your shows. All of those will also have varieties. So for instance, you'll have the national tour, the A show. That means that they do everything that's in the show. You'll have a B show, which is everything but maybe a portal or something that doesn't fit into some of the stages. The E show is basically the concert version. When you go to a theater that doesn't, you can't fit everything in, you just have the actors run around in those costumes with the set pieces they can handle. But the technical director and the stage manager will decide those things when they arrive in the space and make that call. Of course, the production manager wants you to do the best job that you have, or best job you can with any of those things. Cool. All right, there's a little bit about touring at the end there, but tech rehearsals, again, can be very daunting. They can be very exciting. And if you are not into pressurized situations, theater, you may find, is not for you, because it will test you to the core, by all means. All right, have a great day.